But will it be enough to stop the protests? Parents of children with autism say they're relieved the province is backtracking on its controversial plan. The move coming less than 2 weeks before the changes were slated to take effect. Lisa Shing is live at Queen's Park and covering this for us tonight. Take us through the changes the minister announced today, Lisa.
Well, families will now be eligible for funding no matter how much money the parents make, and children currently enrolled in therapy will continue to be able to get it for the next 6 months instead of having it wrap up as of April 1st. Now, these were two big sticking points for parents over the last month, and today they said the government finally listened. It's hard to dispute that parents of children with autism are a passionate group. Since the province announced changes to the autism program, they've been making a lot of noise in front of the legislature and inside.
You're too afraid to face us because you're failing kids across the province.
And today, an indication the province heard them.
Parents were right when they said that autism is a spectrum.
Last month, Lisa MacLeod said as of April 1st, children with autism would get direct funding for treatment with caps of up to $20,000 a year for children under 6 and $5,000 for kids between 6 and 18. Families earning more than $250,000 a year would not be eligible. Now they will be, and MacLeod says children currently getting publicly funded therapy will continue to get it for another 6 months. The province will also consult on how to help kids with more complex needs.
It takes a lot of courage in politics to say, oops.
Although the social services minister did not admit she was wrong.
The plan was the right one. It still is the right one. We're just enhancing it.
She's opened the door a crack. I plan to run right through it as fast as I can.
The province's autism program costs about $321 million. The government has added another $10 million to support children's treatment centers. MacLeod said today the government is prepared to go further after consulting with parents this summer. But these changes are too little for the NDP.
$5,000 a year is not near enough money to provide funding for families.
And come too late for the Liberals.
I will not give the government any credit this morning for something they should have done in the first place.
And today, Lisa MacLeod did say the government's priority is still getting those 23,000 children off the wait list, Dwight. And whether or not that this is enough to stop parents protesting, some of them today said the devil's in the details.
Okay, so when the government originally announced this plan, Lisa, school boards also spoke out against it. Any reaction from the school boards about it today?
Right. Well, originally a lot of teachers, a lot of the teachers' unions and principals were really concerned because parents said if their children's therapies would be ending April 1st, they would be forced to put their kids into schools, and teachers didn't think they were equipped to handle that. Today we heard from the elementary teachers and several other unions who said this is really just delaying the crisis by another 6 months. Keep in mind there are going to be consultations over the summer, as Lisa MacLeod said today, so there could be other changes coming down the pipeline, Dwight.
Thank you, Lisa. And the Ontario government won't say whether they'll change the way future OPP commissioners are appointed, following recommendations from the province's Integrity Commissioner yesterday.
We have an excellent commissioner coming forward on April 8th, and I'm looking forward to working with him. And I'm certainly not going to talk about what happens after he leaves because he hasn't even begun yet.
The process came under scrutiny earlier this year. Premier Doug Ford's friend, Ron Tavener, was appointed for the province's top policing job, sparking concerns of political interference. A report released yesterday looking into the appointment showed Ford did not breach conflict of interest rules, but revealed a troubling recruitment process. Also questionable emails between staff. Ontario's NDP have called for a full public inquiry into the hiring process.
This report speaks volumes about the inside deals and the backroom shenanigans that went on during this process.
This isn't the way it should be done. We want the best person for the job. We want an independent person for the job. We want our police to be independent. It's critical.
Tavener withdrew his name for OPP Commissioner earlier this month amid the controversy. Soon after, the government named York Region Deputy Chief Thomas Carrick as the successful candidate for the job. Dave Shelnut spent the start of this year in a coma after this attack on New Year's Eve. Coming up, I'll speak to him in this exclusive interview about the assault and his incredible recovery.
Whatever did happen on the side of the road that night, I don't think it called for me almost losing my life.
It is called Vision Zero 2.0, and it sets its sights on Scarborough, a region that is disproportionately affected by pedestrian deaths. Farah Morelli joins us live now from Scarborough. And Farah, the Vision Zero plan zeroes in on a deadly problem that is specific to that part of Toronto.
It does, Dwight, and it puts forward a lot of ideas, including lowering speed limits, bringing in red light cameras, but a big issue is crossings, kind of like the one I'm standing at right now, specifically how far apart they are from each other. If you look south behind me here, you can't even see where the next crossing is. Today, we spent the day here in Scarborough trying to get a sense of just how bad the problem is. We also spoke to a historian and urban planner about how Scarborough came to look like this in the first place. Scarborough is known for a lot of things. One of them is the highest ratio of fatal pedestrian deaths in the entire city. Of the 41 pedestrian deaths in 2018, 16 were in Scarborough. One of the issues is crossings. If you look at the city's numbers, the average walking distance between crossings here in Scarborough is almost double those in the downtown core, which sometimes leads to jaywalking. So we're here at Eglinton Avenue East and Brimley. This is one of the areas the city's identified as a problem spot for where pedestrians are getting hit. We're going to see how long it takes us to get to the next crossing. So we made it to the next intersection, which is Falmouth and Eglinton, just under 5 minutes, and that was a 450-meter walk. So the city has identified Scarborough as one of these problem areas when it comes to safety. I'm wondering if you could give me maybe some context as to how we got to this place with Scarborough where we're seeing all these issues.
These streets, these arterial roads as they're called now, seemed like a good idea when they were first laid out in the 1950s. But a lot more traffic uses them now than when they were first conceived, because there's so much more city that has been built out beyond Scarborough now, and all the commercial traffic has to use these roads. So I think there's more traffic here than when they were first conceived, and I think that's going to be part of the problem.
When we're talking about trying to, address some of the safety issues with streets like this, how challenging is it to do this now at this stage in the game?
Well, I think it'll be hard, but one thing I've noticed about planning history is that it's a lot easier to plan a new city than it is to plan to reconstruct an existing urban fabric. And there's a lot of property owners here, there's a lot of habits that people have that would be hard to change. But I don't know whether a new crosswalk would really make that much difference. I know that living in the old city, people still run across streets between traffic lights, and it's only 20 or 30 meters to the traffic lights. So I don't know how many crosswalks you'd have to put here to make it perfectly safe for everyone to use them.
At the end of the day, if someone sees a gap, it doesn't matter, how close the next crosswalk is. Sometimes people just cross, I guess.
I'm afraid that's true.
Now, Dwight, the other thing that Tory is taking aim at with this Vision Zero 2.0 is speed. Scarborough has some of the most high-speed arterial roadways in the city, which of course is linked to pedestrian deaths. So if we can't change pedestrians' behavior when it comes to things like jaywalking, the plan is to take aim at drivers and hit them where it hurts, and that's the wallet.
Yeah, something needs to be done out there. Thank you for that, Farah. More debate and more questions today about what the province's planned subway takeover could look like. Mayor John Tory's executive committee has signed off on the latest city report amid opposition.
Save our subway! Save our subway!
Citizens of Toronto are trying to send a message to City Council and to the Premier that we want to be in control of our public transit system in Toronto.
Several people also took their opposition inside chambers today. That's where the committee debated a report looking at whether the city should continue to upload talks with the province. It also called for the release of provincial documents that could shed more light on the Ford government's plans and for more details on public consultations. The province pitched the upload as a way to get subway projects done faster. Opponents say it would create a fragmented transit system. The province is expected to put legislation forward later this year. Now, today's report will go to City Council for final approval next week. It was quite the wake-up call early this morning for residents of 2 Scarborough homes.
I thought it was like a bomb blast or something, like a blast, very big loud noise.
A TTC bus jumped the curb and plowed into the houses. The driver has been suspended with pay tonight. Alicia San has more on the damage and the reaction.
I'm just going to get out of the way so you can take this all in. The garage has been shorn off. The balcony was taken down with it. That car was parked in the driveway. The TTC bus came to a stop by slamming into the second house here. The homeowner's security cameras recorded the whole thing, and the footage is jaw-dropping.
We heard like a bomb explode. Then after that, I saw my wife is screaming, my kids are screaming.
While structural engineers assess the damage, this family is staying at a friend's house down the street, and they could be there for months.
Really upset, you know. Yeah, we are leaving this house from the beginning, 15 years.
You know, this is the third time in about 10 years that a vehicle has lost control at this corner. A car once took out their lawn ornament. A garbage truck once hopped the curb here. This is by far the worst.
I never ever expect the TTC gonna hit us.
Can you tell me a bit more about your interaction with the driver?
I went to ask her, how are you okay?
Nobody came like that.
Yeah, there's something wrong, maybe sleepy, or some other phone call, or we don't know.
Obviously, it's the homes and the cars that took the most damage, which is so lucky considering that's their daughter's bedroom.
Amazingly, she wasn't in that room?
Yeah, she wasn't there that time. Normally she sleep there, but yesterday she wasn't. She was in the other room.
Went to sleep with my other sister.
Her sister.
While both families will be on the phone non-stop with insurance companies, the TTC will be conducting a full review into how this happened. Ali Chiasson, CBC News, Toronto.
Happy to hear no one was hurt in that crash, Colette, but we can't blame that one on the weather because it was clear.
Yeah, the weather was clear. We were actually treated to another pretty decent day, although a lot of cloud cover, of course. Well, Old Man Winter is going to make a return appearance, even though we are now into spring, coming up as soon as tomorrow, and we're going to feel it with the winds. For now, though, the temperature is still pretty pleasant, a little above seasonal. It's 7 degrees here in the city. For Oshawa, you guys at 8 degrees. Hamilton, how about there? 7 degrees as well. And a look at some of that cloud cover. It's been pretty cloudy most of the day, but then breaking up a little bit. This will be somewhat short-lived, though, because if I broaden the perspective here, I want to show you that we're kind of in between two systems. One that's affecting the eastern seaboard of the U.S., but as it tracks through, it's going to be giving some significant snow to eastern Ontario towards the Ottawa Valley and the St. Lawrence, 5 to 15 centimeters Friday into Friday night. Glad we're not being clipped by that one. But we do have this cold front here that's coming in from the northwest, and it is going to be a cold front. It's going to bring our temperatures down, but also really begin to bring those winds up. So what happens is through the overnight hours, the northwesterly winds with some lake enhancement starts to bring in some light snow to the northwest of the GTA, but even some of those flurries may be mixing at times with a little bit of showery activity with the temperature just above freezing. But we're going to be finding a little bit of that light stuff, kind of patchy, coming through in the overnight hours, and even tomorrow morning could have some wet spots on the roadways. The winds really ramp up as the day wears on tomorrow, even though skies will eventually clear. And those northwesterly winds at times are going to be gusting 60 to 70 kilometers an hour as we get towards Friday afternoon and Friday night. Overnight tonight, 2 degrees. 3 degrees tomorrow, but I do have some warming temperatures, Dwight, for the weekend, and I'll show you that coming up a little later.
Thanks, Colette.
You're welcome.
Less than a week after 50 people were killed in mass shootings in New Zealand, the government has introduced firearm bans to prevent similar incidents from happening in the future.
We will also ban all assault rifles. We will ban all high-capacity magazines. We will ban all parts with the ability to convert semi-automatic or any other type of firearm into a military-style semi-automatic weapon.
Prime Minister Jacinda Ardern has also ordered officials to develop a gun buyback plan for those who already own the weapons. This is expected to cost the government between $100 and $200 million. New Zealand, with a population of 5 million, has almost 250,000 licensed gun owners. Authorities estimate that there are 1.5 million guns in the country. And hundreds are gathering at Nathan Phillips Square tonight to mourn the lives lost in last week's mosque shootings in New Zealand, but also to do much more. They're demanding change. Our Kelda Ewan is there live for us tonight. And Kelda, what's the message behind this event?
Dwight, it's a rally against racism and to demand better laws to protect migrant workers' rights. Now, I was here at around 5 o'clock. There were just about a few dozen people. Nathan Phillips has since really filled up. Hundreds of people have since arrived for this rally. Now, this event is organized by grassroots migrant groups and grassroots migrant and refugee groups, as well as labor unions. Now, today also happens to be the International Day for the Elimination of Racial Discrimination, and organizers thought it's necessary to hold an event to not only mourn the victims of the Christchurch massacre, but to speak out against anti-immigrant rhetoric, which they've seen, and the organizers say, is on the rise. Now, the rally got underway just about half an hour ago. There are about a dozen speakers taking the stage. These include immigrant rights activists, as well as Muslim and Indigenous leaders. They're among those sharing their firsthand experience of racism and xenophobia in the workplace, in schools, in their neighborhoods. And today's event also coincides with the launch of the Migrant Rights Network across the country, which is made up of migrant groups and labor unions. And what they want to do is create a platform to push for legal reform to better protect migrants and refugees ahead of this year's federal election. Now, I also spoke to Aziza Kanji, a Muslim community leader here in Toronto, before today's event, and she said besides law reform, there also needs to be a change in public discourse. Have a listen.
The overemphasis on Muslim acts of violence, which we know receive many times more coverage in our media than acts of far-right or white supremacist violence, even though in this country Muslims are far more likely to be the targets of violence rather than the sources of violence. I think if our public discourse actually was a more accurate reflection of reality, that would be a big step towards addressing many of the misconceptions and stereotypes that lie behind the rise of the far-right.
Nakanji is one of the speakers at this rally today. She will be taking the stage momentarily to speak out against Islamophobia. She will also be leading a prayer to remember the 50 lives lost in the mosque shooting in Christchurch. I'll send it back to you, Dwight.
Thank you, Kelda. Now out to Brampton City Hall for a live look where members of that community are also gathering for a vigil. There's also a book of condolences set up at City Hall and online. All messages will be shared through the New Zealand High Commission for the Community of Christchurch. A new report says Toronto police officers are conducting the majority of the 22,000 yearly strip searches in Ontario, and that police services across the province are conducting too many of them in violation of the law.
My examination of strip searches at the systemic level found that too many strip searches continue to be conducted, and too many strip searches continue to be the subject of adverse judicial findings.
The report was done by the Office of the Independent Police Review Director. It is recommending police services take a close look at their strip search practices. That's because it found procedures for the searches are not consistent from one service to another, and that there's frequently no justification for doing a strip search. A man was rushed to hospital this morning after a stabbing in Rexdale. The victim was found on the porch of a home near Finch and Martin Grove. His injuries are considered serious. Forensic officers and the K-9 unit could be seen outside the home this afternoon. So far, police haven't released any suspect information. And a fourth person has been arrested in the murder of a Hells Angels member at a Mississauga plaza earlier this month. The 32-year-old victim was gunned down in a parking lot outside of a gym on March 11th. He was a member of the Angels Niagara chapter. Yesterday, investigators arrested Mark Issa El Khoury. They say he was trying to cross the border into the U.S. at the time. Police had already arrested 3 other men in connection with the killing. After the break, we'll bring you the story of Dave Shelnut. He was viciously assaulted on New Year's Eve, leaving him in the intensive care unit for 2 weeks. I sat down with him today as he speaks publicly about what happened to him for the first time. That's coming up next.
The weather update is brought to you by Train Extreme Conditions Testing. It's hard to stop a train, really hard. Train, the most reliable heating and cooling brand.
Toronto lawyer Dave Shelnut started 2019 in a horrific way. He was critically injured after a brutal attack on Queen Street. And a warning to our viewers, the video may still be upsetting to some. David and his partner were walking down the street when an exchange between them and a passenger in a car escalated and an altercation ensued, almost ending his life. Security video of the assault was released by Toronto police, hoping to identify the two men involved. One suspect has since been charged. Dave's life is now slowly returning to normal. He's even getting back to work at his law firm. In his first interview since the assault, I met with him at home to talk about what happened that night, his recovery, and his new outlook on life.
My partner and I had gone out. It was New Year's Eve. We kissed at midnight, and then 12:30 decided to call it a night. I remember walking out the door of the bar, and the rest is black. I woke up with lucid memories about 6 days later at St. Mike's.
Your partner, has she told you about what happened and what she saw? Did she? Because you must have had questions, right?
I can't really speak too much about what she said or seen because there's an ongoing police investigation. Right. But from what I've gleaned from the media and from what I've heard, there was an altercation on the side of the road that went south really quickly and became very dangerous, not only for me, but for her. And if it was the case that I was defending her, I actually ended up putting us both in more danger, and so I really regret that. But whatever did happen on the side of the road that night, I don't think it called for me almost losing my life.
How did you feel, though, having what happened to you viewed by so many people? Because this entire city, I think maybe this entire country, that story played out in the media. How did it feel knowing that people saw what happened to you?
I haven't personally watched the video.
Yeah, I was going to ask you that. You did not look at it.
No, not yet. I'm still going through some treatment with some mental health professionals, and them and my doctors have said, don't put yourself through that until you're ready. But what sort of bothers me about it is that my family, my friends, they all saw what happened to me, and had to live it over and over again, and I think that was really upsetting for them.
How has the support been from the people around you? Because I mean, I even got calls from other lawyers I know who knew you, right, who saying, you know, you guys got to keep this in the media. We got to figure out what happened here. And
well, that's part of the reason why I wanted to speak with you today, is just to let people know that I'm okay, because there was a lot of people who were really worried about me, and it meant so much to me. I would wake up when I was able in the hospital every morning and read through the GoFundMe page at all the notes from 500 plus people. And I can't tell you how much that got my day started and put a smile on my face. So the support and the love was huge in my recovery, and I'm forever grateful for that.
It's that injury to the head, though, that had a lot of people worried about it. Your cognitive abilities after you're a lawyer, you use your mind in your work. And,
absolutely.
And how is the progress on that front coming?
So far, everything seems to be back to normal. Yeah. I think with these situations, I've seen it with my clients, if you push things too far, working or staring at screens or what have you, your situation can deteriorate and you can go back. Post-concussive syndrome is a really serious issue that people face with injuries like mine. But I'm just taking it day by day, resting. The fact that I'm cognitively there, my memory is all there, just amazes me.
And something else that struck people, figure you're a lawyer, you live downtown, you're well off. When you're going through this, you didn't have benefits.
Sure.
And you had to somehow, for that GoFundMe page, for people to come together to help you. And a lot of people wouldn't think that somebody like yourself would be in that position.
I work at a small law firm, so it's sometimes hard for small businesses to provide all the gold-plated plans that other places have. And I was probably a bit young and cavalier about benefits as well, even though I almost get in an accident a day on my bicycle riding to work. But look, anything can happen, and here I am. And I'm just so grateful for friends, former colleagues, random people that I don't even know contributed to the GoFundMe page. I can't say enough. It's humbling, really.
How has living through this then changed your life, or even your outlook on life?
I think I've built sort of a career and a life around helping people who've been injured, whether through accidents or acts of violence. So I think it's like extremely poetic that now I am the survivor of violence, having to plan out my own recovery in my own life and listen to my own advice. So it's a new perspective for sure. I mean, I always had empathy for my clients, but I now have a new sort of reinforced empathy. I've received the treatments that they've received in part. I've had to deal with the recurring visions of what happened in the past. I was a lawyer who understood and could help people. I think that now, having this happen to me and advancing my own case, I think that's really going to help clients in the future.
I'm sure viewers are going to appreciate seeing you so healthy and well on the road to recovery, because I have to tell you, Dave, after watching that video, it was.
I'll take your word for it.
Yeah. We won't go deep in it, but people were really worried about you. So it's really, really good to see you doing so well. And thank you for sharing some time with us today.
Thanks, Dwight.
Appreciate it.
we, feel a little bit burned.
Painting a bigger picture of deception.
We've had a long history of friendship and being work colleagues. So that's why this sort of stings a little bit more.
I'm Chris Glover. Tonight, our CBC Toronto investigation continues as 5 more artists speak out about a former Toronto gallery owner.
I want to, somehow redeem myself.
And you'll see how the man accused of ripping off fellow artists is addressing the controversy. That's later on CBC Toronto News at 6.
An update now on an exclusive story we told you about last week. 5 more artists have come forward with allegations against former Toronto gallery owner Stephen Schwartz. They say they gave Schwartz art to sell, but they never got their money or their art back. Chris Glover broke this story and has been working on it. He's back live again tonight. Chris, not only are we talking about new artists here, we're talking about new allegations as well.
Our story last week had artists across the country reaching out to us saying that they dealt with similar problems with art dealers, but 5 specific cases involved the same gallery owner. And 2 of those cases, they allege Schwartz tried to give them another person's artwork in exchange for having lost or sold theirs.
He actually brought this for me. Like, this is what I mean. Like, he's a wonderful person.
In 2014, Gosha Kostyuk gave one of her sculptures to a gallery owner to sell. But other than in this magazine feature he brought her, she says she's never seen it again.
How does it feel now to look at it?
A little weird, especially since this is the piece that, he still owes me money for.
She alleges former Toronto gallery owner Stephen Schwartz agreed to sell the sculpture along with this painting, but she never received money.
We, feel a little bit burned because we thought that, Steve is a friend of ours and we could trust him. Pink ones were sold.
Her inventory list shows Schwartz sold at least 10 of her pieces and paid her. But in 2017, he sold the $4,200 sculpture pictured in the magazine. And Kostyuk says Schwartz told her he didn't have the money to pay her and then stopped returning calls.
I don't think he intentionally set out to, betray all of these artists or take advantage of them.
The allegation follows a CBC Toronto report last week when 2 artists alleged Schwartz ripped them off. In total, CBC has now spoken to 7 artists about 17 pieces. They allege Schwartz owes them roughly $30,000.
We've had a long history of friendship and being work colleagues. So that's why this sort of stings a little bit more.
Painter Kelly Grace shares studio space with Kostyuk and introduced her to her longtime friend, Stephen Schwartz. Grace says Schwartz never paid her for 5 paintings and once offered her another artist's work in exchange.
We pour our hearts into it. So just not knowing where they are is just very frustrating for us.
Scratch on the canvas.
In 2015, Ellen Schuldkraut recovered this painting from Schwartz's gallery. She says he lost the other one she'd given him to sell. Despite a contract, she says Schwartz also offered her another artist's work when he couldn't find hers.
He would have cheated somebody else. He would have given me a painting of somebody else's painting instead of my painting.
Schwartz filed bankruptcy in 2013. He moved his gallery from Toronto to Port Hope, but continued to deal art.
I've made, so many good things happen. But when I was closing up, there were a lot of things went wrong. I admit, to mismanagement.
He disputes ever offering to pay with another artist's work, but does not dispute most of the other allegations.
I want to, somehow redeem myself and get work back to them and pay them. I don't know how yet, but that has always been my intention.
To raise money to pay back, he may be part of an art show fundraiser. Meantime, he says he's trying to connect them with the lost art.
Schwartz said the idea for that fundraiser actually came from an artist friend of his who supports him despite these allegations. I also spoke to the vice president of the Ontario Society of Artists, Diana Bennett. And Bennett, who is also an artist herself and has sold work through Schwartz, said that Schwartz has a long and proven track record as a reputable art dealer. She says she can't square the Stephen Schwartz she knows with the allegations that we're investigating, but she says that at the very least, these allegations will serve a sad reminder for artists to better protect their work.
Yeah, I mean, you're in such a trusting relationship with these dealers. Now, the artists you profile, they're desperate to get their work back. And he was talking about, reuniting them with their work, but anything new on that front?
Well, we first published these stories this morning on radio and as well on our website, cbc.ca/Toronto. And from that reporting, Kelly Grace, who you were just introduced to in the piece there, she was contacted by someone who had bought one of her 5 pieces she'd given Schwartz to sell. So a bit of closure for her there. And you heard it in her voice how much she just wanted to find out who had her pieces and where they had ended up. Now she knows the ending of at least one of those pieces.
Yeah, when you pour your heart and soul into something, you would like to know where it is, but you'd also like to get paid for your work.
Absolutely.
All right, keep on top of this. Thank you for this, Chris.
Thanks.
Mississauga is a step closer tonight to leaving Peel Region. Council has passed the motion to start exploring that possibility. Matt Nagabaselassie has more on what the separation would look like and reaction from those who would be affected.
You look at Mississauga, they must, what are they, 700, 800,000 people?
He's right, and their council wants to be the one making the decisions for all those people. Former Mayor Hazel McCallion wanted out of Peel in 2002.
We just don't have the time to be running up and down to the region of Peel.
And now Mississauga's current mayor and council have passed a motion that calls on the provincial government to allow it to separate from the region.
$85 million is transferred to the region each year, paying for the growth of Brampton and Caledon. So we think that's an opportunity for $85 million to be reinvested into the priorities of Mississauga, businesses and residents.
What could that mean for services like policing, health services, and waste management? Brampton's Mayor Patrick Brown has already spoken out against Mississauga's attempt to break up. Today was Premier Doug Ford's turn to weigh in, and he chose to pass the buck.
They're a relatively large city, and they want to go it alone, but again, I'm not going to steal the thunder of the Minister of Municipal Affairs. He's going to deal with that.
Give us their views.
But the minister wasn't saying anything concrete today, dodging any questions directly addressing Mississauga. Instead, he referred to the current review of regional governments and the 82 municipalities.
And I really encourage people to let us know what they think is good about the regional government system and what needs to be improved.
During this review process, the province hasn't ruled out that some of those municipalities could be amalgamated. This while Mississauga fights to go it alone. Magda Gebrselassie, CBC News, Toronto.
You'll see things that may amaze you, that may disgust you, but you'll always remember it. Get on the Big Spickle Express right down this way, please.
He called it the Big Spickle Express, but we call it the Scarborough LRT. This week, many years ago, it rolled down the tracks for the very first time. Find out why it had that pickle nickname coming up on our Throwback Toronto segment. And no, I'm not going to tell you now, Colette. You still have to wait.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to that because I don't know. I want to know.
Lips are sealed. Sorry.
Let's just go ahead and have a look at what's going on with our almanac for you in terms of what we're seeing or could see in terms of the records for this date in history. Well, how about the record high, 23.3 degrees? That was back in 2012, so we know the potential is there. It's possible. Of course, it didn't happen today, but what was interesting is yesterday's record high, also from 2012. So a couple of really nice warm days there. And yesterday's record low, as well as today's, came from 1939, so a couple of very cold days as well. Our average high at this time of year is 5.2 degrees, and we are at this moment sitting at 7 degrees. So we peaked close to 9 unofficially today, and so seeing those temperatures a little above seasonal again. However, changes coming as we're going to have much colder air pushing in. We're between two systems, one that's going to give some snowfall to eastern Ontario, extreme eastern Ontario, and then this cold front, that's the one that's really going to have an effect on us. As it comes through, our winds are going to turn around to the northwest, and colder air is going to be ushered in, and it's going to become quite breezy. Along with that, across the lakes, there'll be some enhancement, so some light snow potential back to the northwest of the GTA. And quite likely overnight tonight, we'll be seeing some flurries, maybe even some of those scattered into the morning hours for the morning commute, and then a very gradual clearing trend, but also those winds ramping up. And so tomorrow afternoon and evening, gusting to 60, even 70 kilometers an hour. However, high pressure builds in behind that system, brings us sunshine. It's going to be a cold start on Saturday morning, but after that, the temperatures will be climbing through the weekend. So a little bit of very light mix tonight with those temperatures of 1 to 2. Tomorrow's highs, not like today, highs of 2 to 3 degrees that we'll be seeing. And then as we get into the weekend, chilly to start Saturday because of an overnight low of -7, but 5 degrees Saturday. Hopefully we'll get there. Still breezy in the morning. And Sunday, have a look at that one, Dwight, 10 degrees with sunshine.
I like it. If we're calling 5 chilly, I'm good with that. Thanks, Colette.
I know, it's all keeping it in perspective, right?
Exactly. The Ontario government is planning to end the Fair Hydro plan put in place by the previous Liberal government to reduce electricity bills. Instead, they are introducing their own legislation called Fixing the Hydro Mess Act.
We have listened to the people of Ontario. We've promised to clean up the hydro mess, to restore the public's confidence in our energy system, and I'm pleased to say that we are delivering on that promise.
The government says they'll introduce their own provincial rebate, which will be displayed on bills to save billions in borrowing costs. They're also committing to cut 12% off hydro bills.
This is effectively the Liberals' Fair Hydro plan. It's got a new coat on it, it's got a new name, but it's still subsidizing hydro bills in a way that people are not going to be able to afford in the long run.
They have no clue how they're going to fulfill their campaign promise at a 12% reduction in electricity prices. So they just need to be honest with people about how we fix and modernize the system for long-term savings.
The government also announced an overhaul to the Ontario Energy Board, the province's electricity and natural gas regulator. They'll also, quote, refocus $442 million in energy conservation programs. Opposition MPs took their protests over the government's handling of the SNC-Lavalin affair to the next level overnight and into today. They staged a marathon voting session that forced MPs to stay in their seats in the House of Commons.
Mr. Sorensen.
Mr. Nader.
Mr. Nader.
Mr. Soroya.
MPs are voting on more than 250 funding motions, one at a time. The Conservatives want cabinet confidence restrictions waived to allow former Justice Minister Jody Wilson-Raybould to answer their questions. And today there is more fuel for the opposition. A magazine article. Former Cabinet Minister Jane Philpott has told Maclean's that there's much more to the SNC-Lavalin controversy that needs to be told. Philpott resigned from her post as the president of the Treasury Board, saying she had lost confidence in the Liberal government's handling of the SNC affair. That has led the opposition to add Philpott's name to a list of former cabinet ministers they would like to hear from, the other being, of course, Wilson-Raybould.
As for the two members, they have indicated they want to continue to serve as Liberal members. They want to continue to run in the next election as Liberal members of Parliament, and that they share the goals we have and the focus we have.
In her magazine interview, Philpott says she was concerned about the government's handling of the SNC-Lavalin case even before it became a controversy in February, and says Canadians are being prevented from hearing more about what went on in government circles. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
This weather update is brought to you by Fairmont Le Chateau Frontenac, the best location for your next spring break getaway in Quebec City.
It is being called a human catastrophe of the highest order. Officials in southeastern Africa now say more than 500 people were killed by Cyclone Idai. It's been a full week since the storm hit, but flooding is still widespread. Hundreds of thousands of people are in need of food, shelter, and clean water. And as Kayla Hounsel reports, tens of thousands are still waiting to be saved.
The emphasis now is really on the rescue operation. An estimated 15,000 people still need to be rescued, and it is still very difficult to get to them. Video of dramatic rescues is beginning to emerge, and in many cases, helicopters are the only way, as people are actually being plucked from treetops and rooftops, where in some cases they've been waiting for days. These images are really starting to give us a clearer picture of the devastation people are escaping. And a key priority today is to expand the rescue operation and try to push into areas that have not yet been explored. Aid organizations have been warning since the cyclone hit a week ago now that we were only seeing a small percentage of the destruction because they hadn't been able to get to large areas. So the search for survivors very much continues. There is also a focus on getting aid to the people who need it most. Zimbabwe's military is leading efforts to repair roads to allow better access into the areas most affected. Unfortunately, as people continue to struggle to find food, water, and shelter, there is a growing concern the floods have brought waterborne illnesses such as cholera. And there is no relief in sight. When it comes to the weather, the coming days are expected to bring more heavy rains to what has already been called the worst weather-related disaster ever to hit the Southern Hemisphere. Kayla Hounsel, CBC News, London.
The European Council has agreed to delay Britain's exit from the EU until May 22nd, provided Theresa May's withdrawal agreement is approved by the House of Commons next week. The UK's departure was originally set for March 29th, just 9 days from now. British MPs have already rejected it twice. If they don't approve a departure plan, the UK faces a so-called hard exit. That is an exit that would leave the UK without access to the bloc's single market and customs union. Analysts say that could be devastating for Britain's economy.
You feel you want to help keep this planet livable in a way. You want a future for the children and the children of the children.
A group in Roncesvalles is reducing, reusing, and recycling and has some businesses joining their fight. We'll tell you how after the break. Ontario is looking at banning single-use plastics, including bags, water bottles, and straws. One Toronto neighborhood is already doing its part. Some volunteers launched a new initiative called Ronci Reduces. As Hawaii Fidel reports, both residents and businesses are now getting involved.
For Tina Soldeveri, cutting back plastic consumption is simple.
This is a net bag, and that works well for bigger stuff and for produce and vegetables.
Her secret is to BYOB, bring your own bag. Through her initiative Ronci Reduces, she's asking others to do the same.
The question that needs to be asked too is it a good deal for nature?
The Ontario Ministry of the Environment just put out a report that shows each person in the province produces about 1 ton of waste every year. Now Ontario is considering a ban on single-use plastics like bags, water bottles, and straws. That's why Soldeveri decided to start in her own neighborhood. So far, more than 20 businesses have joined. When customers see a green Ronci Reduces sticker like this in the window, it means that the store will accept their reusable bags and reusable containers. For the owner of this store, putting a sticker in the window was an easy decision. He's been encouraging people to bring their own bag for years.
So she brings her own bag all the time.
And customers are listening.
So I either don't bring a bag and just carry things home, or bring, a few bags if I know I'm going somewhere.
Just a few blocks away, the Goods was also quick to sign up.
We're pretty excited about this one.
The owner is always looking for new ways to reduce waste.
Having a group locally that's supporting the same initiative and knowing that they'll be letting other people know, we just want to spread the word.
We're very excited about it.
The Area Business Association says reducing the waste in the neighborhood is a top priority.
So if we can get both community and businesses to work together to help improve that, then that's a bonus.
For Soldeveri, it's about making the planet livable for future generations.
You want a future for the children and the children of the children.
Hawaii Fidel, CBC News, Toronto.
A now literal jewel of Toronto, the Royal Ontario Museum opened to the public this week in 1914. It originally housed 5 different museums of archaeology, paleontology, mineralogy, zoology, and geology. It's the ugly, rundown, much maligned child of the TTC. But the Scarborough RT had quite the opening this week in 1985, complete with champagne, fur coats, and butlers. It was heralded as state-of-the-art, but quickly problems arose, from the line not working in the winter.
Because of budget cuts, heaters weren't installed on those rails that could have melted ice and snow during cold winter days.
To even pickles. The route took passengers by the old Fix Pickles yard.
Well, their initial reaction is, ooh, I didn't think pickles were made like that.
So how did you think pickles were made? That was hilarious.
Yeah.
So that's why they call it the Pickle Express, and now we know. This weekend is looking good, and I know it's only Thursday. I had my mind on NCAA basketball all day, and we're in a bit of a competition here. So
yes, just a little bit.
We'll save that till next week, but what can we expect tomorrow and into the weekend?
Well, it's the kind of thing where you're going to not feel guilty being inside watching basketball tomorrow, but into the weekend, you're going to want to get outside. That's how we're going to be seeing the changing forecast. Let's just show you, though, overnight tonight what you can expect. We do have this cold front that's coming through. It's going to bring those temperatures down, but also really start to ramp up those winds. So overnight tonight, some flurries, somewhat scattered in nature, lows going down to 1 to 2 degrees. Winds aren't so bad yet. However, as we get into tomorrow afternoon, we're going to find the winds coming out of the northwest, 40, 45 kilometers an hour, and the gusts 60 to 70 kilometers an hour, especially as the day wears on. So we're going to have to start talking about wind chills once again. So the high only 3 degrees, but it's going to feel like about -3 to -6.
Were those flurries coming out of that graphic?
Yeah.
Aren't we finished with that? It's spring.
No, wouldn't it be nice if that's how it worked?
That's it for us tonight. Thank you for watching. Mike Wise has you covered late night. See you back here tomorrow, everybody.